Today's show is stacked. We've got a major update out of Europe where President Trump and President Zelensky just shared a pretty surprising moment at Pope Francis's funeral. And you better believe the drama didn't stop there. Then back here at home, 2 sitting judges have now been arrested in 2 days. Also a very different White House Correspondents' Dinner, that being the sitting president absent. An Axios journalist was awarded for his stark coverage of the Biden administration, particularly his cognitive decline, and in his speech called out the media for not doing the same. And if that wasn't enough, the UK Supreme Court dropped a ruling that could have global ripple effects, officially defining a woman as a biological female under British law, with reactions from J.K. Rowling, Pedro Pascal, and a lot of angry headlines flying. So yeah, buckle up, let's dive into it. So first off, the occasion itself, Pope Francis's funeral. World leaders have in Vatican City to honor the late pontiff. It was supposed to be a solemn, unifying moment, and for the most part, it was. But behind the scenes, a lot of things were happening. What came out of the Trump-Zelensky meeting itself? According to early reports, it was described as productive discussion. But the details were light. Sources say Zelensky made a fresh pitch for stronger US involvement in brokering a ceasefire with Russia. And Trump reiterated that he wants a peaceful resolution, but on American terms. And if you needed more proof that this trip got Trump's mind racing, on the flight back home, he unleashed an absolute scorcher of a Truth Social post. Here's the gist of it. Trump says he's starting to believe that Putin isn't serious about ending the war. He's just tapping him along. He also floats the idea of using secondary sanctions, tougher banking restrictions to pressure Russia harder. And of course, he takes some shots at the New York Times and little Peter Baker, blasting them for downplaying Obama's failure in Crimea. One of the most interesting lines from Trump's post says this: "Too many people are dying. It makes me think Putin doesn't want to stop the war." Which, depending on how you read it, sounds a lot like Trump's prepping the public for a harder turn against Moscow if necessary. Now look, we can't not talk about the internet's favorite side plot from this, Trump's blue suit. When he arrived at the Vatican, Trump was wearing a deep blue suit and the media basically went nuts. Cue about a million breathless posts saying, is this a snub? Did Trump just ignore protocol? Was it a power move? Honestly, people close to Trump said he wasn't trying to disrespect anything. He just preferred the look of a blue suit and wasn't interested in blending into a sea of black. And to make it even weirder, there are tons of photos from the Pope's funeral showing other world leaders, including King Abdullah of Jordan, also wearing blue suits. Plus, people pointed out that some of the viral images making the rounds were cranked up with high saturation filters to make the suit look more vibrant and disrespectful than it actually was. So, a bit misleading. As for the situation between Zelensky, Macron, and Trump, Zelensky reportedly asked the Vatican to set up a 3-way conversation, him, Trump, and Macron, about Ukraine's future. But Trump wasn't having it. Sources close to him say he made it crystal clear he didn't want Macron there. Now, the question begs why? Because in Trump's eyes, Macron's been too soft on Russia and quick to negotiate. Trump wanted to keep things direct, no French politics muddying up the waters. Basically, Trump wanted a no BS one-on-one conversation with Zelensky, no distractions. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Did the media over-exaggerate on Trump wearing a blue suit? And do you think Trump is going to be harder on Russia moving forward? And while world leaders were shaking hands and trying to look diplomatic overseas, here in the US, some judges were making headlines of their own for all the wrong reasons. We're talking about not 1, but 2 sitting judges arrested within 48 hours, and the details here are just wild. So there's 2 cases here, one in Wisconsin and one in New Mexico, and these are 2 judges that have been arrested, and the allegations are not some basic technicality. We're talking about harboring violent criminals, gang members, obstructing federal agents, very real are we living in a Netflix show type of stuff. So let's break it all down because this goes way beyond politics. It's about basic law and order. According to the FBI's criminal complaint, Dugan helped an illegal alien, Flores Ruiz, evade ICE agents. And this wasn't some minor case. Ruiz was in court for allegedly beating 2 people so badly they needed to be hospitalized. Now here's where it gets even crazier. ICE agents showed up with a warrant ready to arrest him. George Dugan allegedly freaked out, yelled at the ICE officers, and instead of cooperating, escorted Ruiz and his lawyer through a private jury door into non-public courthouse space. Ruiz bolted, ICE agents chased him through the courthouse and eventually caught him. Attorney General Pam Bondi absolutely torched the situation, calling it truly horrific. She said Judge Dugan chose to protect a violent criminal over the victims sitting in the courtroom ready to testify. Meanwhile, there are Democrats who are obviously defending Dugan, saying, quote, "This is her courtroom. She was maintaining control." They argued she didn't harbor the suspect. She just didn't want ICE arresting people in her courtroom.
No precedence for taking a judge in this manner. And I want to be really clear that what Judge Dugan apparently did was what all of us should be doing. and that is standing up for folks in our communities who need support right now against the Trump regime more than ever.
And then you had CNN bring on legal analyst Harry Litman, and honestly, it's kind of bizarre. Instead of actually calling it out for how wrong it is, he kind of dances around it.
I think it's hyperbolic at best to say she was harboring a fugitive. She was saying, not in my courtroom. And I think this is not just an aggressive, but probably an over-aggressive move by the Bureau.
But even CNN admitted and said flat out, if this complaint is true, this is textbook obstruction. Doesn't matter who's president or what the politics are.
Looking at the complaint, let's strip the politics out of it. This is a crime. If they can prove what happened here, it is a crime.
Then you've got New Mexico Judge Cano, and this one sounds even worse. According to Pam Bondi, Judge Cano and his wife harbored a Tren de Aragua gang member, you know, the extremely violent Venezuelan gang linked to killings and organized crime. Bondi says the judge admitted post-Miranda that he personally smashed the gang member's phone with a hammer and dumped the pieces to hide evidence. On top of that, the gang member had tattoos, a necklace celebrating death, photos of decapitated victims on his phone, and the judge allegedly gave him access to assault rifles that belonged to his daughter. It's very bizarre.
Sending these, you shouldn't be texting these photos out. Not only that, these two, the judge and his wife, gave him assault rifles that belonged to their daughter. That's what they're charged with. In the criminal report affidavit, he goes to a shooting range with these assault rifles, with a suppressor, with other known TDA members, and they're shooting. This is the last person that we want in our country, nor will we ever tolerate a judge or anyone else harboring them.
It gets even crazier, believe it or not. According to federal prosecutors, Judge Cano also allegedly lied to investigators about the gang member's whereabouts and helped him avoid capture for weeks. Then the judge reportedly used his own home as a safe house, hiding the fugitive from law enforcement. Prosecutors are treating this case as harboring a known fugitive and obstruction of justice, with possible charges of aiding and abetting gang activity on the table too. The FBI called it a breathtaking abuse of public trust, and the governor of New Mexico already issued a statement saying they'll push to have Cano removed from the bench permanently. Just absolute madness, but let me know what you think about this in the comments. Why do you think court judges are resorting to this type of behavior? I'm curious to hear what you think. And while trust in parts of our justice system is getting dragged through the mud here across the pond, Britain's highest court just made a landmark ruling that's sparking a whole different kind of firestorm. One that's already pulling in big names like J.K. Rowling and Pedro Pascal, and could have major implications for how similar cases get handled here in the US. So you might have missed this since it was in the UK, but a couple weeks ago, the Supreme Court just dropped a decision that's setting off a political firestorm. Celebrities are also freaking out, and of course, there's a ton of media spin. So Britain's highest court ruled unanimously that under the UK Equality Act, a woman is defined as someone born biologically female. Justice Patrick Hodge, speaking for all 5 justices, made it clear. The terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to a biological woman. Now, on its face, that sounds obvious, right? But it's actually a huge deal because it cuts right to the heart of the gender identity versus biological sex debate that's been raging for years. The UK Supreme Court was asked to interpret the Equality Act, the landmark law protecting against discrimination, and to decide if woman means biological sex or gender identity. And the court said flat out the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer to a biological woman. Now, this was about making sure the legal system stays functional and consistent, especially for things like prisons, sports, and public services that rely on biological categories. Even the judges emphasized that protecting gender identity rights doesn't require rewriting biological definitions under the law. Now, the political reaction was pretty wild. Labour Party leader Keir Starmer, who's been dancing around the whole "what is a woman" question for years, finally gave a straight answer after the ruling, which, okay, cool. Welcome to reality, I guess.
We saw protests this weekend in Bristol, as Paul mentioned, about the Supreme Court ruling. Do you believe a trans woman is a woman?
Look, I think the Supreme Court has answered that question.
So you
and
don't
I
believe
think
a trans woman is a woman?
Look, a woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. So I think it's important that we see the judgment for what it is. It's a welcome step forward. It's real clarity in an area where we did need clarity. I'm pleased it's come about. We need to move and make sure that we now ensure that all guidance is in the right place according to that judgment.
What are your words for the trans community who are worried about what this could mean for them?
Well, look, I think it is important that we have clarity about the law. That's what the Supreme Court is there for. So obviously that's an important and welcome step, and we go forward from there.
A lot of people were not impressed, including J.K. Rowling, who torched him on X posting, "Imagine being such a coward you can only muster the courage to tell the truth once the Supreme Court has ruled on what the truth is." And listen, say what you want about Rowling, but she's not wrong here. Meanwhile, predictably, the celebrity world is losing its mind. Pedro Pascal, the star of The Last of Us, called Rowling's post heinous, even after a literal Supreme Court ruling. Even when the highest court says this is the legal reality, you still have celebrities saying, yeah, but actually, no. It's a classic example of two parallel realities colliding, one based in law and one based in ideology. All right, so the big question, could we see a ruling like this here in the US? Short answer, maybe. Long answer, it would be a total war in the courts. Right now, the US is already fighting about this through lawsuits over Title IX and girls' sports, prison policies, and public school curriculum. But the US Supreme Court has never ruled directly on whether the legal definition of woman must stick to biological facts. If a case came up, the conservative majority, people like Alito, Thomas, maybe even Gorsuch, could definitely reference the UK ruling. It's persuasive authority, not binding, but powerful. You'd probably see arguments like, even the progressive UK had to return to biological fairness and functionality. But, and it's a big but, US culture is way more divided and way more litigious than the UK. So any decision here could set off even bigger political and social chaos than what we're seeing in Britain. Bottom line, the door is definitely cracked open now. Honestly, the biggest takeaway is this. The UK ruling shows that even very progressive societies hit a wall, where biology and law have to align. You can't run a fair society if basic definitions are up for grabs. And whether you're cheering this decision or furious about it, one thing's clear: the debate is far from over in the UK or here at home. And of course, I want to hear from you. Do you think the US should follow the UK's example here? Or are we headed for an even bigger battle over what words like woman legally mean? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, for our final story regarding the White House Correspondents' Dinner, imagine winning a major journalism award, getting up on stage, and then torching your entire industry for failing to do its basic job. Yeah, that's just what happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So as I mentioned, this dinner way more low-key than usual. Axios reporter Alex Thompson took the mic after winning the Aldo Beckman Award for excellence in White House coverage. And instead of just giving the usual "thank you to my editor, my family, yada yada" speech, he went full truth teller mode. He straight up said that the media, including himself, absolutely failed by not covering Biden's cognitive decline while he was in office. He talked about how Biden's team worked overtime to hide it. Meetings got shorter, questions were scripted, appearances tightly managed, and journalists, Thompson said, just kind of went along with it, pretended it wasn't happening, which is a massive deal when you're talking about the guy in charge of running the country.
President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story, and some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows.
Now, for some quick context, Thompson's not some random freelancer with a grudge. He's a legitimate journalist. His reporting on the Biden White House is a big reason he received the award, and he's actually got a book coming out about it called Original Sin, unironically co-written with CNN's Jake Tapper. So when he says the media dropped the ball, that's not nothing. Also, the vibe at the dinner itself, totally different this year. Since Trump was attending the Pope's funeral in Rome, there was no president roasting the press, no comedian roasting the president. Instead, the new WHCA president, Eugene Daniels, basically used his speech to defend journalism itself, especially with the Trump team still hammering the fake news narrative and pushing lawsuits against media outlets.
We journalists are a lot of things. We are competitive and pushy, we are impatient, and sometimes we think we know everything. But we're also human. We miss our families and significant life moments in service to this job. We care deeply about accuracy and take seriously the heavy responsibility of being stewards of the public's trust. What we are not is the opposition. What we are not is the enemy of the people, and what we are not is the enemy of the state.
And it's incredible because on the same night that reporters are patting themselves on the back for defending democracy, you've got one of their own standing up and basically saying, hey, we failed you. Thompson's speech was a gut check moment, a reminder that journalism isn't about protecting politicians, it's about telling the truth even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. And if the media can't own these failures and fix them, it's only going to make the problem of trust in the media way, way worse. Would you agree? Let me know what you think in the comments. Was this a breath of fresh air from the media and journalism? How do you think journalists will take Thompson's message? And that's where we're going to end today's dive into the madness. Of course, now I gotta pass the question off to you. What do you make of Trump and Zelensky's unexpected meeting? Should judges face harsher penalties for helping criminals? And what do you think about the UK Supreme Court's biological definition of woman? Plus, are you surprised the media is still trying to cover for Biden, or is this just business as usual at this point? Let's talk about it in the comments. I love hearing your takes. As always, thank you for being part of the conversation. Thank you for being smart, and I'll see you in the next one.